They're getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Picture a neighborhood where nothing extraordinary ever happens. The kind of street where the biggest news is a sprinkler running too long or a package left on the wrong porch. Lawns maintained. Schedules predictable. Lives lived quietly behind doors that never draw attention. Nancy Guthrie was that kind of neighbor. Coffee at the same time every morning. Flowers watered on the same schedule every day. A life built around rhythm and routine in a home she had made her own over decades. Then one morning, the routine simply stopped. No note. No sign of where she had gone. No explanation that made sense to the people who knew her best. Local police opened a file. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks and spoke in low voices. The story cycled through the news for a few days and then drifted. Cases like this drift. And when they drift, the details that actually matter get buried under the noise of the next headline. But 3 weeks after Nancy Guthrie disappeared, something happened that never made the front page. A team of FBI forensic investigators arrived at a property less than half a mile from her home. They did not announce themselves. They came with ground-penetrating radar equipment, forensic excavation tools, and a behavioral profiler who had spent nearly 2 decades working financial crime cases across 14 states. They were not there to ask questions. They were there to dig up Tomaso Chioni's garden. The first instrument broke ground at exactly 2:22 in the afternoon. What came out of that earth was not what the neighborhood expected. It was not what investigators expected. And it was not what you are expecting right now. But it reframed this entire case in a single afternoon. Before we get there, 2 things. First, you will understand exactly what the FBI recovered from that garden and why it dismantled every assumption local police had built. Second, you will hear what the FBI profiler wrote in her formal report when she reviewed the blood spatter analysis, a statement so specific it has not appeared in any mainstream coverage of this investigation. Stay with this. The profiler assigned to this case had testified in federal court 31 times. When her supervisors told her to treat the Chioni property as a standard financial crime scene, she told them the blood evidence said otherwise. Here's what the forensic record shows. At 2:40 in the morning, 3 weeks before the FBI arrived at that garden, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker cloud sync recorded a sudden spike in cardiac activity. Her heart rate reached levels consistent with extreme physical exertion. She was not asleep. She was not resting in bed. Something was actively happening to Nancy Guthrie at 2:40 in the morning, and her own body recorded every second of it in a secure cloud backup that local police never requested. The FBI did. At the same timestamp, high-definition thermal camera footage from the Chioni property captured a figure matching Tomaso Chioni's height and build moving toward the rear garden. But the thermal imaging showed something else. A second heat signature. Smaller. Weaker. Moving in coordination with the first. Tomaso Chioni was not alone in that garden. Then came the vehicle data. His car's GPS log showed a signal suppression window of exactly 58 minutes. No ping. No location. A 58-minute gap in the digital record that aligned precisely with the window during which Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker went completely silent. The FBI profiler's written assessment described what she found as inconsistent with spontaneous action, reflecting planning, preparation, and prior knowledge of forensic countermeasures. That is not the language used to describe a panicked neighbor. That is the language used to describe someone who understood exactly how evidence is collected and engineered a system to defeat it in advance. Ground-penetrating radar identified a zone of fresh soil disturbance beneath the garden. The shape was not consistent with a grave. It was consistent with a vault. And what investigators pulled from that vault answers a question that almost nobody covering this case thought to ask. What if Nancy Guthrie was never meant to simply disappear? What if she was only ever meant to be replaced? 6 feet beneath a stone fountain that Chioni had installed 3 weeks before the FBI arrived, forensic technicians recovered a waterproof encrypted server. Let that settle for a moment. Not evidence of a crime in the traditional sense. Infrastructure. A live, operational system buried in a residential garden in a quiet suburb while the neighborhood above it searched for a missing woman. The server contained 5 categories of data. Nancy Guthrie's complete biometric profile, her pacemaker rhythms, her pulse signature, her biological data stored and indexed. Full legal documentation of her estate, property records, account access credentials, beneficiary structures, all digitized and organized. Blockchain ledger access points connected to offshore accounts that recorded a 400% spike in transaction activity within hours of her disappearance. A biometric bypass protocol, technology designed to use stored pulse data to mimic a living person authorizing financial transfers. And Phase 5 protocol files, a pre-written liquidation plan outlining the steps to be executed once the estate was fully transferred. That is not a crime of passion. That is a corporate-level financial takeover engineered against one woman in a house half a mile away. The forensic accountant assigned to the case traced every offshore transaction back to a single IP address. That address belonged to the buried server. Tomaso Chioni was running live financial operations from beneath his own garden while his neighbor's family held vigil and the search teams walked the desert. Nature exposed him before the FBI did. Satellite vegetation imaging detected a significant drop in chlorophyll levels in the exact corner of the garden above the server. The cooling fans required to run the system at operating temperature were generating enough heat to kill the plant roots above them. The garden was dying from the inside. Quietly. Steadily. And nobody looked down to ask why until the radar did. The blood spatter report ended the accident theory entirely. Investigators documented biological material in a pattern the profiler formally described as directional and contained. Directional means the force originated from a specific angle. Contained means the scene was actively managed after the fact. Someone cleaned up that scene under time pressure in the middle of the night with enough knowledge of forensic methodology to do it effectively. That is not improvisation. That is preparation. Biometric analysis of the thermal footage provided one additional measurement. The figure moving across that garden carried weight. The stride pattern and heel pressure data were consistent with approximately 120 pounds being transported. That weight was moved to the center of the garden directly above where the server was later recovered. Then acoustic mapping equipment detected something beneath the fountain, a low-frequency mechanical hum. Steady. Deliberate. The cooling fan of an active server running beneath concrete while the neighborhood above it stayed quiet. During the weeks after Nancy Guthrie vanished, neighbors reported seeing Chioni in that garden repeatedly. Calm. Methodical. Unhurried. Pruning hedges he had already pruned. Walking the perimeter in a pattern that did not match any ordinary gardening routine. Forensic behavioral profilers have a specific term for this presentation. They call it the architect's defense. A clinical detachment that does not emerge from innocence. It emerges from total confidence in the system you have built. He was not maintaining a garden. He was monitoring an operation. Every pass around that perimeter was a systems check on the infrastructure buried beneath it. The FBI profiler's final behavioral assessment states that this subject did not react to the disappearance. He managed it. The distinction is not semantic. It is the difference between someone responding to a crisis and someone executing a plan. The Phase 5 files recovered from the server are still being decrypted. The FBI has confirmed that the operational network documented inside those files includes more than one individual. Chioni did not build this architecture alone. The forensic accountant's report states directly that the scale and coordination of this financial operation required months of preparation and access to systems that no single actor typically controls. Someone else had access. Someone else was inside this network. And that second name, the one the FBI has not released, changes the shape of everything that happened on that quiet suburban street. Nancy Guthrie trusted her home. She trusted her neighborhood. She trusted the medical technology installed in her chest to protect her heart. Every one of those trusts was studied, mapped, and weaponized against her by people who had access to all of it long before she disappeared. She was not a random victim. She was a designated target inside a system that had been running for months before it was activated. The FBI investigation is active. The Phase 5 files are being processed. And the full account of what was authorized, who authorized it, and where Nancy Guthrie is right now, that story is still being written. But the server is no longer buried. The operation has been uncovered. And the one thing no system, no matter how carefully engineered, can fully account for is the moment someone looks down and finally asks why the garden is dying.